Let me ask you something. You ever watch a storm roll in from a distance? Like you're sitting on your porch somewhere in the Midwest, maybe Kansas, maybe Oklahoma, and the sky just starts changing. The air pressure shifts, the birds go quiet, and something in your gut says, something's coming. You don't need a weather app. You don't need a meteorologist. Your body just knows. That's where you are right now. Something is coming toward your life with the kind of momentum that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send a text. It doesn't give you a 2-week notice. It simply arrives. And when it does, everything reorganizes itself around that moment. Stay with me. Because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what's been happening beneath the surface of your life. Why that silence you've been living in is not abandonment. And what you unknowingly did this week that sealed the door on the enemy's access to your situation for good. Don't scroll. Don't put this in the background. Your future self needs you present for this one. Hey, I'm George. I write about faith, identity, and the long game. The stuff that actually matters when the noise dies down. If this is your first time here, welcome, stick around. And if something lands today, consider supporting the channel. Even just a like goes a long way. All right, let's get into it. I want to describe something to you, and I want you to tell me, honestly, even just to yourself, if this is accurate. The last few days have felt heavy. Not heavy like grief, not heavy like crisis, more like pressure. Like the atmosphere around you got denser somehow. You've been waking up earlier than you want to. Maybe 3 a.m., maybe 4. And you're not waking up scared. You're just awake. Lying there with a heartbeat that's just slightly too fast and a thought you can't quite name circling somewhere just below the surface. During the day, you've been going through the motions. Work, kids, responsibilities, the whole routine. But you felt like you're doing it through glass. Like everyone around you is operating in normal time, and you're moving through something thick and invisible. And underneath all of that, there's this quiet, persistent knowing that something is about to shift. That the season you've been in, the waiting, the stillness, the silence that stretched so long it started to feel permanent, is coming to a close. But the enemy has been in that space with you, and he has been working overtime. Not because he has power over what's coming. He doesn't. He can't stop what God has already decreed for your life. But what he can do, and what he has been doing, is try to get you to disqualify yourself before the door fully opens. And his strategy has been surgical, precise, specific to you. He hasn't been throwing generic discouragement at you. He's been replaying one moment. One specific moment from this week. A moment where you pulled back. Where you went quiet. Where every single part of you wanted to react. Wanted to defend yourself. Wanted to explain your position. Correct the record. Make sure the other person understood exactly what they did. And you didn't. You stayed quiet. You walked away. You let it go. And now he's been in your ear telling you that was a mistake. That your silence was weakness. That you gave something up in that moment. That you lost ground. I need you to hear this clearly. That moment was not weakness. That was the final move. There's a verse in Nahum, chapter 1, verse 9. That most people walk right past because it doesn't sound like a promise. It sounds like a legal statement. And that's exactly what it is. It says, "What do you conspire against the Lord? He will make an utter end of it. Affliction will not rise up a second time." Affliction will not rise up a second time. The enemy wants you to believe you're in a cycle. He wants you to feel like the clock got reset, like you're back at square one, like everything you've been through, every prayer, every season of waiting, every night you chose faith over fear, was wasted, and now you have to start over. But that's not a cycle you're in. That's a conclusion. The heaviness you're feeling, that's not punishment. That's finality. It's the weight of something ending so completely that it can never return, like the last tension in a cord that is one breath away from snapping. Think about the physics of that for a second. The moment right before a rope snaps. That's when it's under the most tension. That's when it feels the most strained. You could look at it and say, this thing is about to break, and you'd be right. But you might not realize, the breaking is the breakthrough. The snap is the release. That's the moment you're in. And that act of restraint, the moment you chose silence over reaction, that wasn't you losing ground. In the legal courts of heaven, that was you signing the final document. That was the act that removed the enemy's legal right to continue operating in your situation. You didn't ruin anything. You finished everything. I want to take you back to one of the most dramatic scenes in the entire Old Testament, because it's not just a story. It's a blueprint for exactly where you are. 3.5 years, no rain. The land of Israel was cracked open. The soil was dust. Agriculture had collapsed. Livestock were dying. People were desperate. And all of it was a direct result of spiritual compromise. The nation had turned its back on God, and the prophet Elijah had pronounced judgment in the form of drought. Now, at the top of Mount Carmel, something extraordinary had just happened. Elijah called down fire from heaven in front of 450 prophets of Baal. The altar was soaked. He had poured water on it 3 times, just to make it impossible by human standards. And then fire came down and consumed everything. The wood, the stones, the water. Gone. Definitive, undeniable. The entire nation watched it happen. And then immediately after this, before a single cloud appeared, before any natural indication of weather change existed, before there was even the faintest shift in atmospheric pressure, Elijah turned to King Ahab and said, "Go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." Read that again. There was no rain. There was no cloud. There was nothing in the natural world to suggest rain was coming. The sky was the same relentless burning blue it had been for 3.5 years. And Elijah heard rain, not hoped for rain, not predicted rain. Heard it, past tense in his spirit, even though it hadn't arrived yet in the physical. That is what it means to operate from a spiritual frequency. He wasn't projecting. He wasn't being reckless. He was tuned into a channel that broadcasts what heaven has already decided. And he had the audacity to agree with it out loud, in front of a king, in the middle of a drought. Then he went and prayed, 7 times. This part is important, because he didn't pray once and then sit back. He prayed 7 times, not out of desperation, out of persistence. Not because he doubted what he'd heard, but because he understood that there's a process between the decree in the spirit and the manifestation in the natural. And he was going to stay in that process until he saw it. After the 7th prayer, his servant came back and said, "There's a cloud, small one, about the size of a man's hand, rising from the sea." One cloud, the size of a hand, against the entire sky. And Elijah said, "Tell Ahab to get his chariot moving before the rain stops him." He looked at something tiny, something anyone else would have dismissed as nothing, and he saw the full deluge inside it. Because he had the discernment to understand, the size of the beginning has nothing to do with the size of the ending. You are at your cloud the size of a hand moment. There is something small moving in your life right now. Something that doesn't look like much. Maybe it's a conversation that came from nowhere. A door that cracked open. A feeling you can't justify. A thought that keeps returning. An opportunity that seems almost too ordinary to be significant. The enemy is going to point at that small thing and say, "That's it? That's what you've been waiting for. That's your breakthrough." He's going to try to use the smallness of the beginning to talk you out of the magnitude of the ending. Don't let him. Recognize the cloud and start moving before the rain stops you. Here's something that most people don't talk about, and I think it's one of the most strategically important things I can tell you today. The enemy knows he can't stop what God has decreed. He's already lost that battle. The blessing is coming, the door is opening, the season is turning, that's settled. So his next move, and this is subtle, this is crafty, is not to cancel the blessing. It's to corrupt the posture you receive it in. Because a blessing received through the wrong filter doesn't function as a blessing. Let me give you 3 filters he uses. Filter 1, fear. You receive the good thing, but you spend every single day after that waiting for it to be taken away. You can't enjoy it. You can't rest in it. You're constantly bracing for the other shoe to drop. What was supposed to be freedom becomes a new kind of prison. You're free, but you're terrified of the walls you can't see yet. Filter 2, unworthiness. You get the thing, but deep down you don't believe you deserve it. So you self-sabotage. You push people away. You make choices that confirm the narrative that says you were never meant to have it in the first place. The blessing arrives, and you quietly dismantle it because it doesn't match what you believe about yourself. Filter 3, suspicion. This is too good to be true. Something's wrong. There's a catch. And you spend so much energy looking for the catch that you never actually inhabit the blessing. You live in the margins of your own miracle. These filters are not just emotional inconveniences. They are spiritual toxins. They are the enemy's way of neutralizing a blessing after he couldn't stop it. And this is why identity work matters so much right now, before the door fully opens. There was a king in Scripture named Saul, first king of Israel, anointed by Samuel, hand-picked by God, given an extraordinary mandate. He had every advantage, and he wasted all of it because he never actually settled into who God said he was. He kept performing for the crowd. He kept measuring himself against David. He kept making decisions based on what people thought of him instead of what God had spoken over him. He was a king who wore his crown for the applause and not for the calling. And the moment David's star started to rise, the moment the crowd started chanting David's name louder than his, fear became his compass. And a king with fear as his compass becomes a tyrant. He started hunting David. He started dismantling the very future God was trying to build through the next generation. Not because the calling was removed from Saul, it wasn't, but because he never established his identity in the one who gave him the calling in the first place. Here's the application. Before this season fully manifests, heaven is asking you to do something that feels counterintuitive. It's asking you to stop shrinking. Stop making yourself smaller so other people are more comfortable. Stop pre-apologizing for what God is about to put on your life. Stop dimming the light so the room doesn't have to adjust. You were not anointed to fit the room. You were anointed to change the atmosphere of the room. There's a woman in 2 Kings chapter 4 who is one of the most instructive people in the entire Bible. Her name isn't even recorded. She's just a wife of one of the sons of the prophets. Her husband died. She's in debt. The creditors are coming to take her 2 sons as payment. She goes to Elisha in desperation, and Elisha asks her something that sounds almost insulting given the severity of her situation. "What do you have in your house?" She says, "Nothing. Just 1 small jar of olive oil." And he gives her a specific instruction that completely reframes the miracle before it happens. He says, "Go borrow vessels from your neighbors, empty ones, and not just a few, as many as you can find." Here's what he's actually doing. He's not just setting up a logistical exercise. He is expanding her expectation before he activates the provision. He's saying, the size of your miracle is going to be determined by the size of what you prepare to receive. Don't prepare for a little, prepare for a lot. Then he tells her to go home, close the door, and start pouring. And she pours into the first vessel, then the second, then the third. The oil keeps flowing, vessel after vessel after vessel, until she runs out of containers, and the oil stopped. Not because God's supply ran out. The text doesn't say the oil stopped because it was finished. It says the oil stopped because there were no more vessels. The miracle was limited, not by heaven's abundance, but by the woman's capacity to receive. I need you to feel the weight of that, because some of you have been praying for the right thing with the wrong container. You've been asking for overflow into vessels that you've kept deliberately small, because small feels safer, because you've been disappointed before, because you've built a whole theology of modest expectations as a defense mechanism against hope. And God is saying, gather more vessels. Expand what you're expecting. Don't cap the miracle before it starts, because the oil is not going to run out. The only limitation is the one you bring to it. Okay, this is the part that requires the most honesty. And I say that with all the respect in the world, because this isn't easy to sit with. The thing that has been functioning as a ceiling over your life, the reason certain blessings have been circling but not landing, the reason breakthrough has felt close but kept stopping just short, is not the enemy's attack on you, though that was real. It's not the people who betrayed you, though that pain was real. It's not the doors that closed, though that loss was real. The ceiling is a hidden agreement you've been living under. It goes like this. I believe God does this for people, but I am the exception. You believe in testimonies. You celebrate other people's miracles. You quote scriptures about favor and breakthrough with complete sincerity. You believe all of it for everyone else. But somewhere deep underneath the faith you perform in public, there is a private contract. A quiet understanding between you and your fear that says, people with my history, my mistakes, my particular flavor of failure, we don't get the full version. We get the edited version, the scaled-back version, the almost but not quite version. And every time a prayer seemed to go unanswered, you stamped that contract with fresh ink. Every time you watched someone else receive what you'd been believing for, you filed it as evidence. This agreement has been functioning as a spiritual ceiling, invisible to everyone around you, even invisible to you most of the time, but completely real in its effect, allowing blessings to orbit your life without ever touching down, because somewhere in the mechanics of your believing, there's a clause that keeps the landing gear up. God never signed that contract. He never agreed to the exception clause. He never co-signed the lie that your past disqualifies you from the full version. Every promise he made to you. Not around you, not near you, not as an asterisk. Directly, personally, specifically to you. And right now, in this moment, that contract is being torn up. Not because you worked hard enough to deserve it being torn up. Not because you finally fixed all the broken parts of yourself, but because you said yes. In pieces, imperfectly, inconsistently. But you said yes. And heaven collected every fragment. Moses spent 40 years in the desert being prepared for a moment he didn't know was coming. 40 years tending sheep, stripped of every Egyptian identity, learning the land, learning patience, learning what it felt like to have nothing and still be standing. And then one ordinary day, he's out with the flock and there's a bush on fire, but it's not burning up. He goes to look, and God speaks from it. And God says, I've seen the suffering of my people. I'm sending you to Pharaoh. Go. And Moses, standing in front of a literal miracle, hearing the audible voice of God, says, who am I to go? He lists his inadequacies. He says he can't speak well. He asks God to send someone else. And I love Moses for this, honestly, because it's the most human response in Scripture. He's not being faithless, he's being honest. He knows himself. He knows his limitations. He's terrified. But heaven's response is not, "Okay, fair point. We'll wait until you feel ready." Heaven's response is, "I will be with you. Now go." Your feeling of readiness is not the prerequisite. Your obedience is. And here is the thing I most want you to understand today. The thing I'm asking you to carry out of this video and into the rest of your week. You have already crossed the line. The preparation is over. The wilderness has run its course. Every broken yes you prayed into the ceiling. Every act of restraint when reaction would have felt so much better. Every morning you got up and kept going when stopping seemed reasonable. Heaven assembled all of that into a single moment of completion. And that moment is already past. You're not approaching the breakthrough. You're standing on the other side of it, looking back at the door you already walked through. What you're walking into now is not the trial. It is not the preparation. It is not another season of waiting. What you are walking into is the land, the territory, the thing that was promised. And it is already in motion toward you. Put your hand on your chest. Say this out loud, not in your head, out loud. I am not the exception. I am the one this was sent to. Every prayer I prayed in private was received. Nothing was wasted. Not one word. The silence I walked through was not abandonment. It was preparation. The restraint I chose was not weakness. It was the final act that sealed my breakthrough. I release every agreement I made with limitation. Every ceiling I built from disappointment. Every contract I signed with the lie that I don't get the full version. I step into this season fully, without apology, without shrinking, without waiting for permission that has already been given. What God has decreed over my life cannot be reversed, cannot be stolen, cannot be delayed beyond this moment. I receive it, all of it. I am ready, and I am enough. If something shifted while you were in this video, even if you can't fully name it, even if it's just a loosening somewhere in your chest, don't let that dissolve back into your feed.
Leave something in the comments, not for me, not for the algorithm, for yourself. Tell God you received this. Tell the enemy you saw through the lie. That act of acknowledgement is part of the sealing. Don't skip it. And if you know someone who's been standing in that gap, between the life that was and the life that was promised, send this to them. Because they didn't stumble across it by accident either. I'm George. I'll see you in the next one.